Good morning and welcome to NFTs Live. I'm your host, Tyler D. It is Friday, November 5th, a sunny but cold fall day in Chicago. I'm in a great mood. The NFT markets are showing signs of life. I've got my main man, Skyhook, on with me today, and we've got a lot to cover. Today, we're going to hit XCopy's new all-time high set yesterday. We're going to cover Coinbase's new preview and what you may have missed from that video. Some takeaways from NFT NYC. We're going to hit the market movers and surging cryptos. Serialite's big sale and one of Wonderland this week. We're going to quickly hit blue chip PFPs and art blocks. And then we've got an interview with Ricky Sanders talking his new project, the NFT League, the evolution of fantasy on the blockchain, and more. So an action-packed show for today. But first, Sky, how you doing, my man?
Doing well. Appreciate being back on. It's heated up since we talked last Friday a little bit. Not, of course, a full bull run that we love, but good to see some action across some of our favorite projects. And that Coinbase video really got it going. I'm excited for what's ahead this quarter.
Me too. Well, let's get into it. So, top news for today. We're going to start with XCopy. I'm going to pull up the super rare page here. The piece is called "A Coin for the Ferryman." It's from 2018. It was bought yesterday afternoon, early evening for 1,330 Ethereum, over $6 million from JPEGY. So there was some internet sleuthing already on who the buyer was. They have ties to Fingerprints DAO, one of the most established and highest value DAOs out there. Just breaking down this sale a little bit, let's look at the history. So this piece was bought 3 years ago for 0.5 ETH, $139 at the time. Held it for 3 years, turned around and sells it for $6 million. Just an iconic piece. So a few takeaways from my perspective. Just cementing XCopy's number one. He's the number one OG crypto artist. No one else is really commanding these types of values. There are multiple buyers as well. You know, we've seen Cosmo. Now, this is a new buyer that wasn't even on anyone's radar. So that speaks to the interest in the market. The character pieces. So I've been talking to folks and see, like, why do some XCopy pieces go for higher values than others? It seems a big trend is the characters. So some of XCopy's pieces don't really have the characters or individuals. They're more just like static or, you know, glitch without those. So that's a reason why this is such a valuable piece. And again, it's from 2018, so older. And then it's continued to reinforce my belief that we will see a 9-figure XCopy sale this decade. I think we'll see an 8-figure sale within the year. So big news from XCopy. Maybe even bigger news, Coinbase's preview video that they launched yesterday from their head of product on Twitter. He showed the video. I encourage everyone to go ahead and take a look at this vid. He walks through the user experience, essentially how the sign up process and how the initial onboarding will work. But there's two big surprises from my perspective. One, it's not just a marketplace. This looks like it's going to be a social network. You'll have the ability to display your NFTs. You'll have the ability to have followers and then showcase a curated set of your NFTs to them. Additionally, the biggest takeaway is you don't need a Coinbase account. They're letting anyone plug in. Anyone with a MetaMask can plug in and use the marketplace. So this is some huge news. Sky, what's your reaction to the preview we saw yesterday?
I think it's twofold. If you start with one, the ability that anybody can quickly jump on, I think that's almost probably the most important thing, that the hopefully barrier of entry can be quicker on here for some. We're out in front of a lot more people than we were in just OpenSea alone. But me personally, I love the social side of it. You know, the fact that it's going to either ramp up FOMO or ramp up, not in a bad way, but just the ability to see your favorite collectors adding or liking or buying a certain collection, and what's going to continue to follow that. We've talked about our friends at Icy Tools a lot, and their address book is something we can personally build out have maybe 50 people or addresses we follow, but to have an actual social feed of it, I think that really builds into this era that we live in right now, and it really excites me for what's about to come.
Yeah, I totally agree. It was one of the features of Twitter's new functionality that I was excited about. Now Coinbase is doing it, and it's something that OpenSea lacks, right? There's no easy way to go and check on the people you follow's pages, right? You have to know their address, you have to navigate there. This is going to change that. It definitely feels like a step into the metaverse and how we'll be interacting with NFTs going forward. Is this good game, OpenSea? What do you think?
I don't know if it's necessarily that. I mean, I feel like they built in such a ease of use for the last 6-9 months for a lot of these collectors, but we all are going to bring it, into, I think, whatever the easiest and best type of thing is going to be. There was a good conversation on Lucky Trader's show last night, but they said it was just kind of like, okay, we all did MySpace, when we were in high school, college, beyond. Then it went to Facebook, then Twitter, Instagram. You're always going to chase the next best thing, and then you back it up. The next one is learning from it. I'm sure Coinbase has learned so much from OpenSea's faults. So they're probably prepared to take that and run with it. I know we have other platforms that are on its way too that I'm excited. So competition is always good for us consumers.
Totally agree. That's another huge takeaway from this. Competition is good. Some more pressure on OpenSea. They're not just going to be the dominant player. Win OS token. We're all waiting.
Yes.
Please. All right, let's get to our next story. Sky, I'm going to let you take us through this one, but we're wrapping up the end of NFT NYC, huge event, showing a picture here of the Times Square billboards with NFTs all over them. That's been a theme of the week. Catch us through some of the updates and maybe some of your takeaways.
Man, FOMO was at a peak for me over the past week. I think it's been something that I got to share, my one-on-one experience with another Bored Ape holder, in Hawaii, but just the aura of what NFT NYC, I think, brought through these events. Ape Fest for me personally was something that I really followed. You see a lineup of, incredible musicians. One up there, you had comedians, Chris Rock was up there, you had actors that were up there, you had just people that I think are so like-minded attending. That's almost the coolest thing, I think, as we get to this point in our lives as collectors, is you're seeking out people that you want to spend time with that are like-minded. And we find that with a lot of common interests. And that's what you got to do for a week. I know a lot different sides of Twitter made fun of the different people waiting in line or a lot of things. I just kind of, that's their own tea that they can deal with. But it's, for me, it does matter. Community really matters. Ape Fest looked like a heck of event. The Top Shot event, Quavo playing, looked unbelievable. The Creature World event, I saw a lot of people out there. Danny Cole looks like a madman. And then Painting with Ferocious looked unbelievable. Just kind of that one-on-one experience a lot of these people got to have with some big time people in the space. That's just something that I think makes this all our lives, being a part of the communities, getting to know these people that we are so familiar with behind profile pictures, that I'm making sure I'm there next year. No excuses. I want to be a part of these events. I know there's been little pop-up shops at, in Chicago on a couple different things and like that, but I think it's just important to have that experience and can build friendships more than what we have. So yeah, I really wish I was there, and it seemed like it went incredibly well.
Yeah, I'm totally with you. Definitely anchored in some FOMO for me. But I was also fortunate enough to debrief with some of the top players and collectors who attended the event and get some kind of trickle down alpha. And I want to share those with our listeners. So basically the mindset from the big players is NFTs aren't going away. Certainly a little unclear what the next few months look like if ETH continues to rip. But the top collectors price in ETH, they don't price in USD. So you can forget about the thought that these pieces are never going to recover in ETH terms of ETH rips. That's just not the reality, at least at the higher end. Other pieces that we're learning is some of these top whales have no intentions to sell ever. So when you talk about supply and supply crunches that are on the horizon, there is a lot less supply in some of these sets than folks may realize. the view on Coinbase. Coinbase is going to launch Q4 with some minimal functionality, more bells and whistles in Q1. That's absolutely going to be a game changer and just overall a really bullish sentiment. So I certainly was re-energized hearing that from some of the top players. And I think you listened to some of the feedback as well. So I think we're both feeling pretty good.
Yeah. And I think it's a perfect timing too. And you can see the activity across OS obviously has decreased too. But I imagine, that's a lot of why the players are there too. They're not spending the time on their phones, minting and doing buying different collections. So it's kind of a, hopefully we see this uptick as we rise over the end of the year and into next year.
Yeah, they were all busy partying for a week and no one was buying any NFTs. But now they came back and some of them actively started buying, maybe on the train ride home. We'll cover that. So let's get into our market update. Going to show the 3-day board from our friends over at IC. So top of the board, Parallel. Parallel has been really dominating the week. They've been top of the board really since the drop from past Saturday. So certainly a ton of market interest there. But the true headline, you love to see it, the cryptos back in second on the board, over 1,200 ETH traded in the last 3 days. So I mentioned, a friend of the show, Anonymous, I think we caught wind on his train ride home from NFT NYC. He went and swept the Toads floor. I think he bought 13 or 14 that first buying spree, and then he got up to like 19 or 20. That set that market on fire a bit. The floor went from 3.5 to 5 ETH there, really in about a day. Then last night we saw 888 jump in and buy quite a few as well.
Marshmallow was too. I saw a couple buys from Marshmallow.
Yeah. Marshmallow, big fan of the Toads. Matt Schur actually was rocking the Toads hat this morning before he went out to play golf. I want to show this chart from a new Twitter account. They go by Esper_Labs called NFT Market Intelligence. They showed this floor trending chart on their Twitter page. It's actually one I hadn't seen before. It's a cool view. Really, you can just see the impact that one big buyer can have in the market in such a quick time frame. So Anonymous buys all these, the market sets into a frenzy. And then what you can see on the right, this was essentially the supply chart as of November 3rd, 1,400 listings. And then a day later, listings go down by about 130. And then the path up to that 15th ETH floor, which is where it used to be, drops by that 130. So this was a really interesting visual. We hadn't seen this. It's a nice way to see, really how much supply is out there to really churn through to get to those next levels. So curious to see, more from Esper Labs here.
Yeah, I think to your point before to the next one, these floors can be very thin very quickly. Cool Cats bounce back as well. I don't think they're on the 3-day chart yet to that level, but they bounced back. Doodles had almost like a 50% increase in price in a short window. Some of these bigger projects can absolutely rip quickly when we return.
And actually, another piece that got me even more bullish on Toads, I was looking through the IC page. So they've got leaderboards now where you can see who the top holders, the top traders are in every collection. I was just browsing through some of the names in the Toads. There's folks who have over 100. G Money's got 28. Anonymous isn't even in the top 20 holders of Toads. It made me even more bullish looking at it. But we'll see where it goes from here. Back to the board. The rest of the top 5, they've got a common theme. It's apes. It's Ape Week. I don't know if folks got the FOMO from missing Ape Fest or what. Fat Ape Club in third on the board. Mutant Apes with over 1,000 ETH traded is seen as the lower cost entry into that ecosystem. I think they went up as high as 3.8. They're sitting around 3.6, 3.8 here this morning. Then Desperate Ape Wives for everyone who has their apes out there, rounding out the top 5. Sky, you touched on Doodles a bit. They've been surging. I also want to hit on a few drops that we're not seeing on the top of the leaderboard, Quantum and NBA Top Shot. Do you want to maybe talk a little bit about what we saw from Quantum this week?
Yeah. So quick TLDR for those that aren't familiar with Quantum, Justin Aversano, who is the Twin Flames creator, arguably the #1 photo collection. I don't even know it's arguably, has 190 ETH floor, best photo collection out there. launched what I'm referring to as the art blocks of the NFT photography world. First drop was on Monday, Anxious Pleasures by Amy Elkins. In order to have that be minted, you needed to have a mint pass, which those were the ones that were about 6 ETH, still sitting around there. Amy Elkins has not seen any secondary action on the actual quantum collection. But the two that dropped afterwards that were public mints, which was Alberto Rizzo, excuse me, not the old Cubs Rizzo, Alberto Rizzo, who was more of like a 60s, 70s dance photographer, like freelance guy who's very popular in his era, had his collection out of 100 drop. And then Chris Graves, they did a Dutch auction starting at 3.33, and it was quickly down to minting out at about 0.65. Both of those collections now sit with a floor above 2.5 ETH. One, maybe Graves is about 2 ETH right now. But the interesting question when it comes to photography NFTs is there enough of a buyer pool out there? We've seen right around 40 secondary purchases between those two collections over a 3-day time period. You know, Art Blocks at its hype drops, we'll see 40 purchases within 10 minutes. Mm-hmm. So we are either seeing A, an illiquid market, or B, a holders wants to be early to the adoption of photography NFTs at this type of level and doesn't want to let it go. I think the biggest sale was 5 ETH on one. So I think if you are wanting to play the mint and flip game, it's not as much of a foolproof system. Because that buying pool is not super liquid. They have another drop next week, Thursday. Sally Davies out of 78. It'll be 0.55 public mint. If it's going to be like Alberto Rizzo's, that's sold out in about 90 seconds. So you have to be all aboard it if you want to go for this, but you may be left holding it longer than you typically would be if you're somebody like that likes to mint and flip.
Totally agree. I'd caution anyone looking to flip. I don't see the buyer pool yet for these NFTs. Certainly the thesis here on playing this week is it's a bet on Justin Ebersano. It's a bet on this new platform, which certainly I've made similar plays. I've avoided, I haven't had time to dive in and really wrap my head around this yet, but certainly one to watch. Then quickly, NBA Top Shot. NBA Top Shot launched their Series 3 yesterday. A lot of negative feedback out there on the drop format. So users were able to purchase up to 10 packs. The line took hours to work through. I know I was in line at one point and actually just left my spot. Folks frustrated that some were able to buy 10 and they weren't able to get a pack. And then the supply continues to increase. So we'll see how Series 3 continues to go here for NBA Top Shot. That takes us through our top drops and market update. Let's go ahead and get into one of ones. So we touched on XCopy. That was, of course, the number one headline from One of Wonderland this week. Number two, Searlight continues to cement his place as a top artist. Sells this piece, Hunter in, for 100 ETH just days after putting it on the market. It's a new buyer. So at Demilane, a supposedly new whale who's entering the space. So a big splash first buy from that person. We'll see what else is on their list. Other news for Searlight, the Capsule House. The first raffle is going to be this weekend for one of Sear's original pieces. Highly anticipated for all Caps holders. We actually saw a bit of a floor sweep last night. So I'm very curious how that raffle goes and a potential secondary for that first piece. Moving forward, this artist at WLOP, probably second headlines in One of One world this week, sold 3 pieces, one for 40, 2 others for 20 ETH. You can see their style, this singular woman in different poses and frames. So very distinctive. You can immediately pick these up right away who the artist is. Very distinct, very recognizable. So I can certainly see the draw there. Other headlines, it's really been a fairly quiet week as most of the big players around NFT NYC. Anonymous is back and buying. He bought a Neurocolor piece yesterday evening for around 18 ETH. Very cool piece. We'll post that in the show notes as well. Quick, my takeaways on the one of one market right now. Super Rare had its record breaking month in October, but I feel like it's whales that are dominating. Most of that record breaking is probably on the back of Starry Night, Cap, and just a few others. So we don't really see that whole much of a mainstream buying pool yet in Super Rare. I do think eventually that will change, but it's an area of the most opportunity, but the hardest work right now. So I'm very curious to continue keeping my pulse on this sector of the market and see where it goes. That's one of ones. Let's get into blue chip PFPs. We'll start with the punks briefly. I'm not going to show the Larva Lab page. Punk 4 down a bit here, 5%, sitting around 91.9 here for the female punks, 94 for the males this morning. We see the Kongs sitting at 99. Those are down a bit on the week. We've got the Bored Apes. Where are they here? Okay, so they're down about 13%. Was this surprising to you, Sky, seeing the dip for the apes?
I think it leans itself to sitting around a USD price, it feels like right now. That floor got up to about 36. ETH ran, about 5%. We saw that floor retrace a little bit more. It's about 150K USD. It's right about the floor most times. But I would feel that, I guess I was a little bit, the one surprise thing is it almost feels like normally apes and punks would go before cool cats and toads. It would just be the trickle down. So the fact that the mid tier ran before the top tier, a little bit different kind of than some of the historical stuff we have seen.
Yeah, I totally agree. Take us through your thoughts on cool cats here. So those dipped quite a bit. I think we saw some sales in the fives. Actually, I feel like cool cats are kind of cementing their places around 30% above the toads. Toads bounced back. We saw the cats bounce back, sitting around down 6% on the week, kind of in line with the rest of the market. How are you feeling about the cats?
Yeah, I think a bounce back is always a good sign that people still have the interest. That's been a elongated process, waiting for the milk token, the tokenomics, waiting for the companion with it. One of our good friends flipped his cat for a toad yesterday to kind of get into it. It's just a whole different space of owners. I think then if you view the toads guys, the punks kind of holders versus potentially cool cats is that new wave of people that have gotten in. So I'm very curious how the tokenomics and milk will still play into it. But getting back to 10 for both of those projects, that's still a lot that has to happen.
It's a big jump. I know BD Maxi came out a month ago and said cool cats and toads were going to flip apes within the month. I, on the show, also said that eventually I think toads flip apes. I think I went as far as said that they'll flip punks. That might have been
I think they deleted that footage, maybe.
Hopefully delete that. I think my takeaway from this past week is this: the community strength of BAYC is tough to match. It's unmatched right now, I would go as far as saying. So I think that will be a strong enough force to continue to propel them up the board. And I think it's not a zero-sum game. Toads can do well, cats can do well, and so can apes. So I think that's my current position on the matter. Well, let's get into art blocks. We can still see some of those floors, some headlines. Fidenzas are down quite a bit, 15% on the week, sitting out at 113 floor. Ringers are actually up at 75. There's actually a punk 4156 is out there saying I'll trade a floor punk for a ringer. So if anyone is interested in that trade, go ahead and message him. Other than that, it's continued bleeding. So we see elevated deconstructions at 50, archetypes down in the teens here, coming down from as high as 40 or so. Subscapes down, unigrids down. It's pretty much the same story all the way down.
I did see just before we got on here, Starry Night bought a 90 ETH Meridian just before we went live here. So
yeah, I saw that in the feed too. I'm assuming it's some type of a grill at 10x.
Yeah, it's like fades down as it goes. It's a cool one, I think. I do have to jump though. I know you're going
Sure.
in with Ricky next, so just giving Matt heads up here that I'm going to be stepping off and looking forward to listening to this interview.
Sky, thanks for joining us as always.
Of course.
Talk to you soon, bud.
Yep.
I'll quickly take us through the rest of our blocks and then we'll get to the interview here. So just kind of state of the market. I was scrolling through the open projects page here, primarily factory. I mean, it's a bit of a bloodbath. So these new projects are barely getting into the teens out of 1,000 potential supplies. So, these 5 haven't even gotten to 100 yet. Amoeba just barely got past 100. So there's a much smaller minting pool out there in this market right now, which is a healthy reset, but certainly a lot of interest on when that is going to turn around. But there are some big drops coming up. So we've got Parade from Lauren Bednar is actually going live as we speak. Let's see. Okay, so 72 of 1,000 have been minted. It's at the bottom price. So Lauren Bednar, his curated drop phase ran all the way up to a 23 floor. A lot of hype around his next drop on Playground called Parade, but a pretty slow auction. So we'll want to see how this one plays out. And then there's a big curated drop on Monday. Curated's back. We'll do a bigger preview on Monday's show. It's called Edifice by Ben Kovac. Some folks are saying there's some Fidenza-like vibes. That's a big, big statement. We'll see, but we'll go ahead and share some of the Rinkeby tests on Monday in a deeper preview. But that takes us through our segments. Let's go ahead and get to the second half of our show and an interview with Ricky Sanders. Ricky, welcome to the show. How you doing?
Well, thanks for having me. I'm doing well. I mean, we are talking you showed all the red in the NFT market, which obviously isn't perfectly ideal. And yet I still feel like from, taking the vibes of the community, especially with, friends that were at Ape Fest, that everyone's still on a positive note. So it really isn't like FUD Fest like you thought it might be, seeing some of those numbers. ETH is up, so we're feeling good.
I'm with you. I feel like some of the Discord and Twitter chatter, there was some FUD this week, but I think it was from folks who weren't at NFT NYC. And maybe they were just angry that they weren't there. But the vibes I've gotten from everyone who did attend and the immediate feedback was all green, bullish, feeling good about where we're at.
Yeah, exactly. And I must say, I was in New York for a wedding on Sunday, and my wife was the one who was like, we have to go home. You can't leave me. And I know we've only been married for a few weeks, but it was the first I thought that maybe I could have a mistress here, and that mistress being, Ape Fest, but no, it's all good.
Yeah. So did you check in on Ape Fest and the yacht party? What were your reactions?
So thoughts? I saw it on Twitter. It looked incredible. I'm really upset that I was not there. It looked like a great networking opportunity where you got to meet all the people who you follow on Twitter. I've done Twitter Spaces with Josh Ong. I've talked to a bunch of other apes, even in conjunction with this project, just getting their input. And so seeing them there and not being there was pretty brutal, but it looks like the function that was thrown. I mean, I'm never missing another one. Personally, like I got to be there the next time. I think that's the vibes that everyone got who wasn't there.
Yeah, it looked like just a sick party with some really big headliners. So I think we've already been able to pick up a little bit that some of your ties to the NFT community is through Bored Apes. Maybe for our listeners who don't know you, maybe give us some quick background and a little bit on your NFT story, kind of how you got into the market.
Well, I was someone who missed Bitcoin, in the early 2010s. I missed Ethereum. I missed a lot of that. And I followed people who I considered I even actually, by the way, missed out on like the early days of daily fantasy, like Star Street. And so when Bales's article came out about NBA Top Shot, I just told myself, I'm not missing this one. And so like literally the day it came out, I did my research. I went on and I bought a bunch of like Series 1 legendaries. And I just said, I'm going in on this. And that was where my NFT journey started. And then, watching NFT Twitter sort of expand to CryptoPunks, which I'm upset I didn't get in, but then Bored Apes. I got in on Bored Apes the day after they minted from there. I mean, NBA Top Shot for me was kind of like the gateway to the rest of the NFT market. And from Bored Apes, I just sort of got it. So that's where I started. But like many of the daily fantasy guys who I'm sure are listening, like Bales is the one who turned me onto it. And I mean, NBA Top Shot is still something that I'm pretty passionate in. Of course, like there are still trials and tribulations. We would hope by series 3 that things would be working a little bit more smoothly, but I still get it on drops. I still have fun collecting, and that's kind of how I feel about NFTs as a whole.
Yeah, it's an interesting story, and I feel like a lot of the DFS community probably shares a similar onboarding experience. I think Bales in his blog post about NBA Top Shot was a big eye opener. I know I read the post and didn't act on it. I was in the camp right away, kind of the square camp of, why does this YouTube clip have any value? I sat on it for four to 6 weeks. And then Dirty Rush, who folks may know from the community, he actually kind of kept nudging me to get in. I got an NBA Top Shot right before it went up like 40%, hit the current top, and then started dropping, which I think a lot of folks got in right on when I did. But then for me, I got into like hash mass and some of those. I thought that my bet was the NBA Top Shot community would absolutely get into NFTs. I placed some of my early bets in hash mass. That was a bit of a whiff. It turned out that I think you were right. It was more Bored Apes. So you were a pretty big player in Bored Apes, so to speak. And I think you've also got a bit of an infamous story to maybe tell us about a sale you may regret.
Yeah, I've been flipping apes since back in the day, and it really disgusts me to see the price of some of the apes that I had been on. But I made what I consider to be a longer term play on a trippy ape. And for anyone who's followed that market, at the time I bought one of the more expensive ones at 12 ETH. It was like 30 grand. And I called my dad to say, like, look, I made this play. He had actually invested in some of the Top Shots with me. So I was like, if you wanted to throw some of the money in, like I would be open to that. And he ended up saying that he would take a portion. And that was the worst decision of my entire life. Because every time he understood Top Shot. Like, okay, they're like trading cards. But every time I would talk to him, he'd be like, have we sold it yet? Have we sold it yet? Like, I don't want my money in this for that long. And I was like, well, I do. And so finally we got an offer of what turned out to be, I think it was like 36 ETH and a noise ape for it. And my dad's like, we have to take this. We took it. It ended up being like 42 ETH worth of value. 2 weeks later, they were selling for 100 ETH, like flying off the shelves. And soon after that, we're talking $1 million+. So, we took home something like 120 US dollars. And if we had just waited a few more weeks, it would have been a significant difference. And given the price of ETH now, we're probably talking close to $2 million. So that one hurts, but hey, I mean, I stayed in the game. I still got multiples. I still have fun doing it. And, you make mistakes. What can you say?
Yeah, of course that's brutal to hear, but I think any of us who were active in the space back when those products were launching probably have similar stories. And none of us had any idea of where the market would go. I played apes on multiple occasions. I think I bought and sold 9 over the course of my kind of trading. And I don't hold any now. I sold off right before the peak surge there, unfortunately, but definitely hold them in, the top tier, of blue chip PFP and NFT projects. Kind of curious to hear kind of where things have gone since then. So, you're still holding apes, but clearly something kind of ticked in your mind, like, hey, maybe we should think about creating a project of some kind. So tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah. So actually, I don't know if you remember Royal Society of Players, or you ever got into that. It is still around, by the way, a poker NFT project where there were 16 total jokers, which were like the holy grail for minting them, because not only were they worthwhile and you could use them to, complete any hand, but you got access to a specific joker chat. And while I only held my joker, by the way, I minted 40 for that project because I really did believe in it. I only held my joker for 10 days, but during those 10 days, I got to know all the guys in the joker chat. And one of them messaged me like, "Hey, you're a daily fantasy guy, right?" It's like, "Yeah." It's like, "Well, I've been thinking about fantasy football on the blockchain." And this was before Own the Moment. This was before we had seen anything of fantasy football released. And so got to talking. I ended up selling the Joker, but we had been in touch since then. And we kind of have had a long journey of finding the right developers, finding the right legal minds, which actually took a while, and getting them to kind of make the assessment about what we can and cannot do. And I think how ours is different than a lot of people who have kind of, spun their take on it is it's much closer to dynasty fantasy football, which is what I think people are looking for in terms of like the real deal fantasy. We've seen projects come out where you could, mid teams. We've seen basically the loot of fantasy football where they give you just like a team already made. But our take on it is you actually mint players and, have a dynasty football team, can trade them via NFT trader, can buy and sell based on value. And you can also play them in weekly free contests. So our idea stems back to the Royal Society of Players days. And we've kind of been working on it since then. And honestly, the most difficult part so far has been finding the right legal team, ones with experience with obviously professional football, having them kind of lay down the groundwork and then going from there. Because anyone who's created an NFT project, or if you're thinking of it, you really have to have everything thought out in terms of the contract before you even get started. You can't just say like, I have ideas, let's change it. Like everything gets baked into that initial contract, and you cannot start that until you have everything finalized. So it's been a long process. As I mentioned, we met back in July. We obviously still are not launched. There's been a lot of tech involved with it as well. But I think our idea, and if you've seen our artwork, by the way, which we started working on back then as well, I think both our idea and our artwork is best and truest to what people will already be comfortable with.
Yeah, well, a ton to unpack there. I'll work backwards. I love the artwork. It looks great. But starting with one of your initial comments on the Royal Society of Players and that Discord group, right? I think for those of our listeners who are new to this ecosystem, Discord and Twitter is the new LinkedIn.
Yep.
For Web3, for blockchain, this is how like-minded folks are meeting each other, sharing ideas. This is an amazing story, from you, that you were just chatting with some guys in an NFT project, right? That you had, the same mindset to mint and buy, and then already, such a big idea has come from it. Your comment on, finding the legal advice, that's certainly not a surprise. It seems like we're still in just such Wild West mode, and there's so few like true, experts.
Yeah.
So I guess how did you guys kind of go about that? How did you seek out legal advice, if you don't mind sharing?
Yeah, I don't mind sharing at all. I actually, from other networking opportunities, I wonder if you've been to some of these Chicago get-togethers for like daily fantasy guys. Matt Riddle's run a few of them. Have you been to any of those?
I haven't.
Okay. Yeah,
but I'm very curious.
Yeah, there's been a few of them. Like Andy Behrens has been to them. Evan Silva's been to them. Like I've networked with all those guys. And at those events, I met a guy who is now legal counsel for MGM, who had a vast network of legal counsels who he could hook us up with. And it just so happens that he hooked us up with the former legal counsel for the DC United, someone who has defended actual professional football players in what was the scandal with the Saints. Bountygate is where he defended some players in. So it just so happened that we used a network that I met via different networking in Chicago to kind of find the right guy for the job.
That's a really cool story. I have not been to the daily fantasy meetups. I'm definitely like I'm in the bottom tier. Fantasy
well, no,
player.
it was for everyone. It was just like it was an open invitation at like a bar on Sheffield. I forgot what it was called, but yeah, it was just like an open invitation for anyone who liked fantasy in general to come hang out.
Nice. Well, we're glad that worked out. Tell us a little bit more about the product. So we understand you're minting players. It's a dynasty league. I'm going to pull up the website, the NFT League.io, and I understand you guys are doing an overhaul of the site, but maybe get us into the next level of detail about how this is all going to work.
Yeah, so how it's going to work is we will have 3 weekly contests. Basically, what we had to think through is how do we make it fair for everyone? How do we make it fair for someone who wants to come in and they want to, buy their way to the grand prize week? And how do we make it fair to the average Joe who just wants to buy a few of them and have fun on a weekly basis? So we will have 3 different weekly contests per week. Within those contests, you can only use a token once, and you can only use a player ID once. And the way this works is where you are on the screen right now. So as you can see, you will have Miami running back 37. And then, obviously on a week-to-week basis throughout the course of a player's entire career, you will get the stats associated with Miami running back 37 while you have that player. There are multipliers involved, but the way we've solved this is multipliers are only available to use in one of our 3 contests, which you can use 4 NFT athletes within that contest. There will be another contest weekly where you use 4 NFT athletes, but you cannot use multipliers, meaning that if someone were to get, the highest multiplier, Kansas City quarterback 15, he would be great to use in that multiplier contest, but he's just Kansas City quarterback 15 in the other contest. And then we have a contest weekly where you only need 2. So we are rewarding people for just minting 2 of them and just having 2 guys to play. And we will post the rules for these contests weekly. We don't envision the 4-person contest, the rules changing, quarterback and 3 flex. But, to reward different holders on a week-to-week basis, we do anticipate the 2-player changing where there'll be different position groups highlighted on a week-to-week basis. So let's say you mint Kansas City tight end 87. Well, if there's a week that you're forced to use tight ends, that will make him more valuable because obviously then the top wide receivers can't be used in that spot. So there's multiple ways to win. And by the way, each one of those 3 contests are free to enter, and we'll have payouts that we expect to be about 100 people deep per week, 100 entries deep per week. So in order to join all 4, that's 4, 4, and 2, that's 10 NFT athletes that you need to join them, or you can just join 1. That's the thing about this is you could kind of just pick and choose how you want to, basically attack your dynasty. And I think there's also going to be ways to attack like how you feel about players. Certainly you could just mint 1. And if you get a young player, you could hang on to him. And as his statistics get better, call it, Jacksonville quarterback, you can hang on to him. You can move him later. You can certainly play for now, play for later. There's going to be different game theory built within this game because it is Dynasty that we're honestly looking forward to see how the market reacts to. And beyond that, we have solutions for retired players, because I feel like that's like the first question that people ask. Okay, if I'm getting a player, how does that work? Well, you could simply burn your token for a free mint of a rookie, the following season. So that solves that. And then in terms of what if a player gets injured? Well, we are preloading a waiver wire liquidity pool with some ETH, where you could go ahead and put a Tennessee running back 22 in that liquidity pool. If you want to play for now, pick up another player and kind of, go back to the waiver wire in the future when your player is not injured. So we have a whole bunch of different ways to kind of make it like real life Dynasty fantasy football. And then we've obviously got, the player pools and prizes on a weekly basis.
Yeah. I mean, I had to compliment you all. It seems like you've really thought this out. Like you've thought through, the injuries, the retirement. So just let me play this back to you so that I understand it. So someone mints a few of the players, they have the option to play in the weekly contests. They're free to enter. So essentially, why not?
Exactly.
Right. And then I think there's the second piece is the dynasty aspect. Right. And watching these players' growth and value accrue over time. But then there's the NFT marketplace, which is the wild card here, and what separates this right from every other existing dynasty fantasy football league that already exists, right?
Exactly.
And the short-term dynamics of being able to flip players for profit, maybe able to pick up, multiple. So it's really interesting. My head's already spinning on some of the game theory.
And I haven't even given you the full picture in the sense that I kind of buried the lead. Everyone who wins their specific tournament on a week-to-week basis will be entered into a week 17 contest where Bored Ape 410 will be the grand prize. And just to reward the people even further for minting 2, Mutant Ape number 10944, you will be able to compete in a contest week 17. It's basically like a qualifier. If you mint 2 of them, is you are automatically entered for that tournament to potentially win Mutant Ape number 10944. So we are really rewarding people for minting multiples, because that's what you need to fill a roster. Obviously, our minimum roster. So we kind of just want to guide people there and give them as much motivation as possible to get them to 2 instead of 1.
These are huge prizes, right? So, I mean, Mutant Apes are over 15 grand right now, USD. I don't know this particular ape. I mean, it's a pretty sharp ape with the pipe and the BAYC merch there, certainly above floor. So,
yeah,
upwards of 150 to 200K. So that's a real prize. So how do you qualify for that? If you win one of the weeklies, you are entered into the week 17?
Correct. You have 3 chances to win each week, because there's 3 contests. So if you win one of the 3 contests on a week-to-week basis, you'll be entered for that grand prize week. By the way, if there are ties, because that is certainly possible with multiple mints of each player, even though we're trying to keep obviously the best players rarer. But if there is a tie in week 17, we will carry that over to week 18. And for this board ape, if you tie again in week 18, we will split a 50 ETH valuation for it. So we obviously can't like split the ape. I guess we could if we used fractional, but I'm not sure people would appreciate that, as opposed to just getting the split ETH value. So we would automatically pay you the ETH value split. Let's say it's 3-way, 50 divided by 3 to 3 winners.
I think what's also curious and interesting about this too is the somewhat of a PFP dynamic, right? In the actual NFT, right? So we've got Top Shot, they've got Own the Moment, where you can do daily tournaments there with prizes, but those are just using Top Shot moments. These are NFTs, they're 3D, they're cool looking, you can use them as your PFP. So I guess, how do you think your user base will be thinking with that lens and actually caring about the PFP aspect, or do you think it's more, we're just here for the Dynasty League and grinding the daily tournaments, or do you think it's both?
So the reason that we did it this way is so we don't have to make that assumption, is that people can come in for their variety of reasons. I think the typical NFT profile picture grinders will come to this project because we have 3D, halo looking figures who in themselves look like they've taken a ton of time, which they have, to kind of make these profile pictures, and you could rock those. And then you have the people who will come from the fantasy industry who will understand that aspect of it. So the goal was to kind of bring those 2 facets together, so we didn't have to sort of guess. We could just, people can kind of have what's important to them be what's important to them with this project. And that's why we kind of wanted to get the art right. We wanted to get the tech right. We wanted to get it all right, so we could kind of appeal to more than just if we only got, half of it right or 3/4 of it right. So I think the profile picture aspect is a big deal. By the way, we can now customize these to your liking pretty quickly. So next week, what we're going to be doing is, if you go on our Twitter and you join our Discord, and you tweet at us and you donate $50 to the CTE Foundation, which I'm going to tweet, we will make you your own custom NFT athlete profile picture just for donating some money to there. So we're going to hopefully raise some money and do some good through this. Obviously, we are talking football here. There are some side effects to football, and if we could do anything along the way just from an NFT to do good, us taking a few minutes to kind of customize profile pictures is no big deal. So again, minimum of $50 next week. I'll announce it on my Twitter. We'll announce it on this Twitter, but we will give you a custom profile picture if you go ahead and donate.
That's very cool. Love the charity aspect to it. It's something I certainly look for in new projects. Back to the PFP concept, I do think there's certainly a user base who thinks the cartoon JPEGs are silly, right? But I could see them identifying with this and certainly identifying with their Dynasty team. So I'm really excited to see how it plays out. But certainly you're entering now a larger sports NFT market and ecosystem. Kind of, what are your thoughts on the sports market right now with Top Shot, So Rare, others, and then we can kind of get into just the overall market.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're only at the tip of the iceberg in terms of what can be done. Even like just talking Top Shot specifically, I don't think we're anywhere near like all the use cases that we're going to see. Like we've begun to see them enter NBA stadiums, but I mean, I think we're going to get to the point where like if you're top collectors for a specific team, like you're going to get tickets more often. There are going to be ways to, if you're the top collector for say LaMelo Ball, like you're going to be able to get benefits, whether it's interacting with him online or in person. I think we're just at the tip of the iceberg there. And certainly for the fantasy aspect, back in the day it was rotisserie fantasy is when they created it, in a like little chicken restaurant. And certainly they were doing it by hand and it exploded. Now you've got ESPN, Yahoo, Daily Fantasy, etc. So I think we're at the rotisserie chicken level of the fantasy world as well. And one thing I forgot to mention that I haven't seen any other projects doing is we actually just acquired, and part of the reason that this process is taking a little longer is the technology to do simulations in the off season. So people are going to ask like, what happens to my token once the season is over? Well, we're still going to be running contests, and hopefully we're going to have it where people hang out in our Discord and you can follow along with the statistics as a full weekend of NFL football is simulated, and then we'll still have prizes for you in the off season. So basically your token does not fall to zero. And there's still fun use cases. And by the way, that's before we talk about the other sports that we've been using. So I see, us in the beginning, I see Top Shot in the beginning. I see every one of these sports NFTs in the beginning. I've already seen sites talking about doing like casinos and sports books on the blockchain, which I'm not sure how that's going to work, especially in the United States. There's a reason we've stayed away from all that sort of stuff, but I've seen people start talking about doing that. So I think we are truly in the beginning of sports NFTs specifically. I think we've gotten a little bit further in terms of the NFT industry as a whole. We're not in the true beginning days anymore, but sports, we are still in infancy.
Yeah, I think we're seeing it even in sports, right? Like the first wave of NFTs, maybe it was just artwork or, the picture is what you got, but quickly the market is demanding utility, economic, financial gain, decentralized finance. So we're seeing that mix everywhere. So you touched on the casinos. One of the projects I'm in, actually, Monkey Bet DAO, the owners will be running decentralized casinos offshore. Yep. And that they're able to get the proceeds using the token. You mentioned, utility in NBA Top Shot. Certainly, I've collected almost all the Bulls players, hoping that I'll be able to get Bulls tickets, right, as potential utility, or at least a special lounge,
right,
in the United Center somewhere. And then what you guys are doing essentially is play to earn, right? Like this is P2E NFT gaming, which, folks haven't heard those buzzwords yet, you will. It is absolutely what a lot of folks think will be the biggest use case or market for NFTs in the future.
Yeah, and the thing about ours is it'll be immediate. Once we launch, we have these contests, which is why we've kind of taken the time to get it right. So when we say we're launching, this isn't like, oh, we're promising you a DAO or a token or anything in the future. This is once you mint your token, and we know the market conditions are tougher now than they were a month ago. Well, on each week, you can win back more than or equal to the amount of ETH that you spent on the token, which should give people some solace that, hey, this one stands out above the others because I do have the play to earn ability pretty quickly.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, how you feel about launching in these market conditions. Certainly a launch now is definitely a different feel than it would have been, say, 3 to 4 weeks ago. But I mean, you mentioned the P2E piece. That's certainly big. Any other, thoughts or, how your team has been kind of thinking about launching?
Yeah, I mean, we've always been in this for the long term, envisioning that we could expand to other sports, that we will have future drops, etc. So we're not just your average profile picture that closes the set. And that's that. Like there will always be more players coming into professional football that we could focus on and have their statistics tied to. So we've adjusted to market conditions where we expected to be just a 0.08 with 10,000 supply. We have adjusted that, and we haven't announced the final numbers, but I can tell you we've come down on price and we've come down on supply a little bit to kind of just make our community happy. We don't have a Bored Ape level community at this point. We do expect that the people in our community are, the ones that are engaged now, certainly to stay engaged, but those who come in to have, fun contests on a weekly basis. We just want to make our community a fun one for those who are in it to start. And we always have the ability to expand from there. So we've kind of taken, the look that we're going to build something awesome for the people who are loyal to us. And then from there, we expect it to, spread word of mouth. As market conditions become better, we can go from there. We'll have ETH 2.0, but we've been working too hard on this to put it off any longer. So as soon as we get tech 100% functional, we're going to drop it because we're passionate about it, and we think we will meet fair market conditions that everyone will appreciate comparatively to our initial thought.
Yeah, and I mean, a differentiator from your team, if you've got the game ready to go, right?
Yeah.
And right after minting, folks are ready to enter the contests. I mean, that's utility. That's your P2E. It's ready to go right there. So certainly you can feel good about that. I am curious long term. So of course, getting this off the ground, getting the week 17 is of course, the primary focus. Any other big pieces on the longer term roadmap that you can share at this point?
Yeah, so we definitely by season 2 want to have the ability for people to create their own personal contests. So we want, call it your group of friends, call it, me and 7 other Bored Apes, etc., where we could kind of set, however much ETH we want to all put in and just have it kind of dished out at the end of the week and have them kind of be like, side games that you see on other sites. So we want everyone to have the ability to, within their network, play their own weekly contest. That is definitely the big one. And besides that, I mean, we are going to look at the legality of these other sports because statistics have been ruled public domain. We do feel good that if we use no name or likeness involved with any sport, that we can just use the statistics and basically what is a generic profile picture that doesn't have, any team usage, that we should be able to do that for any sport. So once football's done, we will have the simulations, which we think is a cool aspect. We should be able to have that for all sports. And that is, when we start expanding to the others and also improving our football product to have customization for our users as well.
So we've got customization, we've got potentially multiple sports, and then maybe even a decentralized dynasty fantasy marketplace.
Yeah.
Here on the blockchain. I love it. It's incredibly innovative. It's a really cool idea. I'm excited for this one. I'll be definitely paying attention to the mint and drop. And there's a good chance that I get in the mix here as well, because this is you've got me excited for sure, Ricky.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Certainly appreciate your time. Any final comments or anything you want to leave us with ahead of the drop? Any details?
Yeah, I mean, we are selling this as membership based, is that a token comes with a lot of aspects of the membership. And one thing I have not mentioned yet is we do have an ex-professional football player who has agreed to come weekly and talk fantasy football in general with our user base. He said he may, quote, have some friends that join him. Can only guarantee we have one, but would be fun to see multiples there. But that is part of the membership to the NFT League in the community.
Very, very cool. Well, for our listeners, go ahead and follow Ricky Sanders, R Sanders DFS on Twitter.
I should mention, if you join our Discord, discord.gg/the NFT League, we have a whitelist open right now. We are hoping to sell a large portion of the initial mint via the whitelist. So if you go there and you whitelist, we can obviously get you on board. That guarantees up to 4 NFT athletes before public. And with the way that that gas fees are right now, you'd like to have the 48 hours to kind of pick and choose when you can do that. And also, I'd like to give away a free NFT athlete from this show. So if you go ahead and you join the Discord and you tweet at the NFT League saying that you came from this show, we will give you one lucky winner and a free NFT athlete mint, which means we'll just, kind of airdrop it to you after we are done. So again, go to the NFT League on Twitter, tweet us, make sure you are in the Discord because we will verify that. And assuming you've done both and you came from this show, you got a shot at a free NFT athlete.
We love it. Well, very gracious. Thank you for the giveaway. Certainly we're excited. So go out there, get on their Twitter. We'll post all this in our show notes. We'll post the details on the giveaway as well, so everyone can see it. Go get in their Discord and learn more about the project and start to feel out the community. Ricky, certainly appreciate your time. Thanks for joining us here today.
Of course. Thanks for having me.
All right, for the listeners, that is it. That's our show for today. Thanks to my main man Skyhook for kicking us off, and of course Ricky for the interview. Thanks for tuning in. We'll catch you next Monday at 11 a.m. Central. Till then, stay safe in those NFT streets. Goodbye.